Welcome to Chicago Reacts. My name is Lauren, and today I am going to be looking at a video from Wired. This one is Trauma Surgeon breaks down every home alone injury of sewing. So yeah, I've been like, this is the kind of silly like Christmassy video that I want to incorporate some more Christmas stuff. Like for October, I had Halloween stuff constantly. Weirdly, it feels difficult for me to find Christmas stuff. So please tell me in the comments below, like fun Christmas type movies and like videos I should be looking at, because I've been finding it difficult to like have good Christmas stuff. And I think it's probably because I really don't search out Christmas things very often. I'm not a huge, like, I celebrate it, you know, out of habit more than anything else. It's not my favorite holiday. It's not my favorite time of year. Sorry. If it, you know, I know it's the most wonderful time of the year or whatever, but I'm like, there are better times of the year. In any case, I don't know good Christmas content, so please help me to discover good Christmas content. And I am going to discuss this trauma surgeon letting us know exactly what Kevin McAllister did to the wet bandits. Let's go. And this one works because it's Chicago too.
Hi, I'm Annie Onishi, and I'm a trauma surgeon.
Hi, Dr. Annie.
And this is each and every injury in Home Alone.
I wonder if she's also going to tell us, like, what exactly would have happened to, like, she's just going to go through the injuries, because then we could, you know, it's like, I don't know. I hope she, like, discusses a little bit what it would mean. I feel like I listened to a Sawbones episode once where Sydney, like, talked through the major injuries and, like, explained, like, well, this is what it would do to you and why it's so much worse than it looks. I wonder if Annie is going to do that too.
We're going to be talking about all of the injuries from Home Alone parts 1 and 2. 3 and 4. Damn. We don't have time for that.
That's fair. 1 and 2 though. Let's go.
Don't get scared now.
Okay.
That first fall looks like the most severe in this series. He's up a couple of steps, he gets full air, and then he lands flat on his back. That's gonna be a lot of force right on that landing surface. So Harry's second fall doesn't look as severe or dramatic as his first, but it is in the context of having already had a great big fall.
It looks pretty bad to me.
So
he did a
his
flip.
Ribs weren't broken before. I bet you they're broken now. When our ribs break, the little edges can sort of dislodge and damage internal organs. So from the back, they can ding a kidney, they can ding a liver, they can ding a spleen.
Dang.
So my guess is a bunch of broken ribs, plus or minus hemopneumothorax, plus or minus splenic lac. Marv falls down a bunch of stairs, but he sort of is at a ground level when he does it and sort of seems like a little bit less velocity and force. So I do think Marv is a little younger, which may explain why he's able to bounce back from this injury a little faster.
All right. And I mean, I've slid downstairs like that before too. It's not fun. But I did have a coworker who slid downstairs like that before, and she broke her arm and like the bone was sticking out. So like, I don't know. It all depends on the landing, really.
So looking straight up and having the iron land on his face, what that's gonna do is what's called an axial loading injury. So there's a bunch of load compressing the spine from top to bottom. This is most commonly seen in the context of a young, usually intoxicated person jumping off of a bridge or the edge of a pool into a shallow pool of water, and their head strikes the bottom of either the lake or the pond or the pool. We have a ground level fall with a head strike on the back. What we worry about from these ground level falls is something called a contra coup injury. So we strike the back of our head, our brain gets rocked from there, but then as the brain settles down, because it sits in a cavity of fluid, it hits the front of the skull as well. So you may expect to see some bleeding in the back of the brain accompanied by some bleeding in the front of the brain as the brain sort of rocks about the skull cavity itself.
Well,
Ow.
We know that Harry and Marv are in for a whole world of suffering tonight. You can see how sensitive they seem to be to what is probably more of a sensation of sort of like a bee sting. It could cause some damage if it hit you right in the eyeball, if it was really close range like that.
Okay.
But
So
in
she's
general,
calling
every
them
pellet
babies.
injury I've ever seen has just been in the fat.
She's like, they're like kind of wimpy though, so maybe even worse for them than you'd think, because a pellet gun did that. Why would you grab it if it's glowing red?
If I had to guess what type of burn this is going to be, my guess is going to be a second degree, which is a partial thickness burn. So it burns off the epidermis, part of the dermis, which is the deeper layer of skin. The important difference between second degree burns and third degree burns is that with the second degree burns, you don't lose the little stem cells that live in those layers of skin. So it will heal without a scar. So while he's branded with the McAllister M now, that's not going to be permanent. I would consider a burn what's called a distracting injury. So because the burn hurts so bad and is so dramatic and the patient is so worried about it, they may not have noticed that they fell down a few stairs.
I hate that part so much.
So Marv has lost his socks, lost his shoes. He is stepping on this nail here. It looks like it goes in about an inch or two. Puncture injuries are notoriously high risk for infection. It's this tiny little deep hole that is dark and warm and full of blood and is a great place for bacteria to grow.
And he just sits there and he keeps getting burned up. I'm just like, burns they hurt so bad. I hate it if I burn myself on anything, because I've gotten some pretty bad burns before, like pretty bad second degree burns even, and it hurts. It hurts for days. Like, oh, and he's just sitting there letting it happen and just going on throughout his day with his hand. Ugh. So he's kind of a wimp, but also way stronger and way more of a badass than I am. Because like I would be fucking out.
First aid training because he dunks his head in the snow. It's probably mostly steam coming off his head. You can see that he's lost a bunch of his hair, and then the skin doesn't have that pink appearance that his hand had, so probably not as deep of a burn, but still definitely very painful. I think at this point, Harry and Marv really should be suspicious that they are invading the house of some sort of psychopath with like some very sadistic tendencies, and I would have turned away at this point already.
Yeah, it's not worth it. Oh, what is it? Oh, it was like honey or something.
My concern is that with glue on this burn on his head and then feathers on the burn, I think that's going to make wound care really difficult. So some poor burn nurse is going to have to go through and pick out every last little bit of feather from that burn. And that surface area of that burn is way too big to numb up well. So he would just have to sort of sit there as they picked out little bits of feather from his burn skin. I think that's really going to hurt.
Well, that's his fault. He didn't look.
Abandoned entering the house through any particular door because of all the booby traps. Here we have Marv sneaking through a window and encountering a bunch of
really just slammed his feet down on those two, didn't he?
Ornaments. That very fine glass that you see that the ornaments are made of, when that shatters, it splinters. And those little fine bits of glass are impossible to get out.
I'm like twitching.
It leads to a lot of pain, a lot of torture for both the patient and whoever's trying to pick out all that glass.
I'm gonna kill that kid!
Well, the patient's gonna go home with the sensation of glass in his feet, and he's just gonna have to continue to keep his feet soaked, and this stuff will work its way out eventually.
Oh, I mean, I got okay, look, I got a piece of glass that was like lodged in my hand for over a month this summer. Like from middle of August to like the second week of September, like I was just stuck in my hand, and I didn't know that it was in there. I really thought it had come out, but it hadn't. And I feel like it was starting to work its way out by the time I finally managed to like squeeze it out myself. But like it wasn't even like a super, super fine piece like that. It was kind of a thicker chunk. But I'm like, that is not a comfortable sensation. Because that thing hurt anytime I put my hand down to like shift my weight on like a chair or anything. It was like, and I was playing softball too at the time. So if I tried to swing, like it just dug into just like nothing good. It was it sucked bad. I mean, it heals up super great. Like it's like there's but eventually it took forever. So like that sucks. Ow.
Maybe these guys should get their eyes checked.
Yeah,
because
right.
the ground in front of you should always be within your field of view. So for them to not have seen those cars makes me a little concerned that maybe from all these head injuries, they may have some sort of visual defect. No way to really know without further testing, but definitely makes me a little suspicious.
Optometrist, baby.
When the neck hyperextends like that at a fast rate with a lot of acceleration and deceleration, you can get something called a hangman's fracture, which is
Also, I've seen some things where people are like, that blow to the head could have killed them. Like that one alone could have killed them easily.
when the second cervical vertebrae breaks in a couple of places. It's a really unstable fracture. It can be a very high risk for a devastating cord injury at that level. The lay term for these hyperextension type injuries is whiplash. Whiplash really refers to all the muscular stiffness you get after a big hyperextension injury like that. So now we have a couple of other injuries in rapid sequence. So not only do we have this hyperextension injury of the neck, then we have a heavy object in the form of Harry landing on Marv. So if Marv's ribs weren't broken before, my bet is they're going to be broken now. This little sequence, at a very minimum, we have at least soft tissue damage from a whiplash injury. At the worst, we have something like a hangman's fracture, a hyperextension injury of the neck. We have then a fall from height, we have a head strike, and then we have crushed by a heavy falling object.
There he is!
That wire is very thick and very obvious. So they couldn't see it. Again, I'm really worried about their visual fields. They're just looks like they're not able to see anything below about nose level. It's very concerning.
It is weird.
A crowbar is going to cause a lot of damage because that's just a heavy metal object with a lot of directed force at one particular location. It's kind of hard to see exactly where this blow lands. But it looks sort of epigastrium, which is the sort of upper part of the central abdomen, to maybe some ribs or sternal area. This assault with the crowbar right in this area, to me, is very reminiscent of something we call a handlebar injury. So when somebody is riding their bike and they crash and their handlebars jam into the
I've gotten that
area and squishes all the organs and bruises them.
It hurts a lot. That's happened to me before. Like just hit the thing and then like I spun over the handlebars and I landed really, really hard like on my ribs on the asphalt of the road and I slid. That was a really unfun bike crash to like, because I definitely got the wind knocked out of me on that one. And I think I might have cracked a rib. I didn't break anything, but like I scraped up and like, oh, that hurt so bad. Ooh, not a good one.
So that can really cause a lot of damage.
That one they didn't hit too hard.
Whenever our bodies decelerate in such a fashion, be it in a car, on a bicycle, motorcycle, or swinging from a rope directly into a brick wall, all of our organs continue moving until they hit the brick wall and they stop. That's called a deceleration injury.
Ouch. Because I have, like, again, not gotten the wind knocked out of me on a rope before, like, just by falling off of it in the wrong way, and I kind of landed funny and, like, just the shock waves up my whole body. Like, that was, again, I was much younger. I was in, like, elementary school or something, and, like, I couldn't breathe. And I was like, you know. I hate those injuries where I get the wind knocked out of me. I've gotten a lot of them in my life, and it's just, like, it hurts, and it hurts everything, and then again, you can't breathe. So that's scary. Ugh, hate it.
A lot of our organs, including our heart or aorta, our small intestine, our colon, they're tethered.
Isn't
to
the aorta part of the
in
heart?
certain locations. So when we decelerate, things
Is that its own organ?
about that tether. These deceleration injuries can be really subtle. You can't necessarily see them on a CAT scan unless you order a special type of CAT scan or unless you have a very high suspicion for such a thing.
Thanks, old man.
As bleeding in the skull accumulates and pushes on the brain and the brain swells, there's nowhere for the brain to go because the skull is a fixed, compact cavity. So when the brain continues to swell, the only place for it to go is down and out, which is called a herniation. So after this assault with the shovel, we see both guys completely passed out, total loss of consciousness.
Finally.
But then a couple minutes later, these guys are back up, walking and talking. This makes me really concerned for something called an epidural hematoma. What that means is that there's blood accumulating in the epidural space, which is underneath the skull but outside the brain, and expanding slowly. Classically, these people have a big head bonk, maybe from a shovel. They come to, and then they have what's called a lucid interval. But slowly but surely, as that blood expands within the epidural space, they then start to lose consciousness again and can even go on to herniate and die pretty quickly. So
she's obviously overlooking the fact that Marv and Harry are clearly superhuman. They have some kind of ability, like fast regeneration, like they have something that makes them not susceptible to death from any of these injuries.
Actually, a story we get all the time, especially from the ski hill or after a bar fight, and everybody's like, okay, he's gonna walk it off. And then 5-10 minutes later, they've lost consciousness again. So we just saw each and every injury in Home Alone 1.
Fewer than I
Either
thought.
these guys are really tough, or they've got a great trauma doctor, because they're gonna be back for Home Alone 2.
I mean,
well, hello.
Oh! He did it! Did what? Oh!
Lesson number 1 is don't mess with New Yorkers, because that's what's going to happen to you. But with a good solid right hook like that, typically the point of impact is the cheekbone here. This is something called the zygomatic arch. This is the
zygomatic arch.
Fragile bone.
I love the zygomatic arch. I learned about that in like a makeup class I took in college, and like I will never forget about the zygomatic arch. It's just fun to say instead of cheekbone. It's like, oh, my zygomatic arches. I need that. Like, it's like, blood orange. It's red. Like, you know, that guy, except for zygomatic arches and cheekbones.
As far as facial structures go, this is often the first thing to break when somebody gets hit, especially when their face is turning. It looks like a pretty solid punch, but I think knowing these guys, I think they'll recover.
Wow, Marv. That's pretty impressive. He went really, really high.
It looks like Harry suffers a pretty decent fall from height and absolutely crushes this car.
So again, there's that super strength coming in again, though, from Harry, because like he launched the man.
Harry is rendered speechless by this fall. That's either just the wind getting knocked out of him is sort of the lay term. He may have broken a couple of ribs and maybe gotten what's called a pneumothorax, which is when the lungs collapse and air is building up inside the thoracic cavity but outside the lungs. That could make it pretty difficult to speak or to get words out. I think out of all the injuries that we will review today, this series of injuries is probably one of the more severe ones. It's probably a tie between 4 bricks to the head from a high height versus the shovel to the head.
Really?
So his inability to speak could be the sign of a pretty severe brain bleed inside, especially over the area that controls our speech, which is usually the left side of our brain. Sort of depends on the patient. Definitely at this point, Marv would need to be rushed over to the hospital to get checked out for his head trauma.
Yeah. Ow.
Well, a nail gun to the buttock or the face, the ER doc could just pull that out, and there's nothing majorly critical.
Still ow, but
the nail straight to the groin, the thing I would be concerned about is an underlying vascular injury, such as to the femoral vein or the femoral artery. If there was an expanding hematoma, which means blood pooling up underneath the nail, that would be a reason to go to the operating room to do a nice cut down, get all the vasculature exposed, and remove that nail under really controlled circumstances.
Ow, he's so lucky he didn't land right on his
Every
neck.
fall from height is a little bit different. The injury pattern is pretty recognizable. So depending on whether your ribs are broken, whether your back is broken, whether you have any other orthopedic injuries to either your pelvis, your extremities, solid organ injuries like lacerating your spleen or your liver from your fall, that's going to determine what needs to be done for you in the hospital and what long-term consequences you could expect. With rib fractures, those people are in a pretty real amount of pain for 4 to 6 to 8 weeks, but
Long
certainly
time.
a bad accident or a bad fall from height can lead to lots of problems with chronic pain in the future.
I mean, like I said, I've cracked a rib. I feel like that's probably not as good, not as harsh as like fracturing one or breaking one entirely. It's definitely not as bad as that. It's like, but it did hurt for well over a month. Like it was like I was in pain for a while on that one, and there's nothing you can really do. Oh my God. How did he not die?
Here, Marv is falling straight from the first floor. That's a pretty decent
But once again, that's his eyesight, just not seeing that the floor's not there. That's
height. And he falls flat on his front and his face. That is a pretty bad way to land. All of our bony structures at that moment of impact are going to compress and thereby squish all of our organs inside. So in addition to breaking stuff like his sternum, the fronts of his ribs, potentially his arms, any fall from height, no matter how you land, you're probably going to mess some stuff up.
See, I'm going to stop again and talk about another bad injury I received when I was a kid, but I fell from like 15 feet. I landed on my back and it hurt a lot. I remember like, again, wind knocked out of me, couldn't breathe. My mom took me to the ER because I was having a hard time breathing and like moving. And again, I fell from really high, so she was concerned. I do remember though, that like we sat there for a long time and no one was seeing us. And so we just were like, and she was like, are you still in pain? And I was like, I mean, it hurts, but like, I think I'm fine. And so we left and it hurt again. It like kept hurting like after that for a little bit, but like not too bad. I'm like, look, kids have rubber bones, I swear to God. Cause like I fell from seriously 15 feet in the air, landed straight on my back and like walked away with like nary a crack. Like that was not the time I cracked my ribs. Like I was totally fine. And like, I mean, it's possible that's the reason I still sometimes have like back pain, but I don't know. But like it is scary to fall from a height and it does hurt to land really hard. Anywhere. Another one of these.
We suffer.
I'm going to try and go through these a little faster.
When the brain is rocked within the fixed cavity of the skull than really from just direct blows. This pile of tools landing on him where things are just falling from the top down and just compressing the skull on top of the neck and the spines. Definitely would expect some brain trauma with this, potentially some
My neck hurts
trauma.
just thinking about all of this.
It looks like they also hit sort of the shoulder and the arms and some other things. So we would really have to check this guy carefully for other orthopedic injuries.
Ow. Oh, damn. What's he? Oh, no. Ow. Oh.
This is really reminding me of a phenomenon that we have here in Central Oregon called black ice. That happens overnight when just the water vapor from the air just freezes right on the cement and makes this tiny imperceptible layer of ice. So from the months of about October to January, we get tons and tons of patients just like Marv who are slipping and sliding on the way out to the car, trying to catch their balance, and off they go. Super common to see broken arms.
Yeah, we get that kind of thing
wrists,
in Chicago too.
Broken ribs from just a big fall on some cement. Another injury that we see here, which is a really feared injury, is something called a straddle injury. So as Marv is sliding towards this bookshelf, we can see him run into this post between his legs at a decent amount of velocity, be it a motorcycle, a bicycle, commonly a fence post as someone is hopping a fence, gets jammed up between the legs
on the fence.
And it's obviously a very unpleasant series of injuries. That can lead to urogenital trauma, that can lead to rectal trauma. It can lead to hematomas in places where you really don't want hematomas, and they can be really hard to deal with and very difficult to control.
I was this close to getting a straddle injury. So this is like turning into like, how many of these Home Alone injuries have I suffered in like other contexts? Not all at once, but like I was like this close to getting one of these straddle injuries. We were sledding and there was just like this big old pole that was like in the middle. Shouldn't have been like, it was really icy snow and like I'd like aimed it wrong and I was going straight for it and I couldn't stop and I couldn't get off the sled. And I ended up managing to turn my leg. So it ended up slamming into my shin instead of the straddle injury happening. I did crack my shin. And honestly, to this day, this shin that I hit there, it wiggles. The other one doesn't, like, there's like some little like pitting in the other shin because I hit my shins a lot on stuff. But like this one had like an actual divot in it where I slammed into this pole. So I'm like that, ugh.
I know I keep saying this, but actually I think this is the most lethal mechanism we have seen yet to date. This is a high voltage.
Well, it does kill him.
Injuries. As the current travels through the body,
like,
the body
he turns into a skeleton.
Act as a resistor, which produces heat as electricity travels through. So pretty much anything in the line of fire from that source to where the patient's grounded is just going to get fried. The most dangerous things that can happen are cardiac arrhythmias. So the heart is an electrified organ, so a big dose of electricity is going to send the heart into all kinds of crazy rhythms. It can cause kidney failure. It can cause the muscle tissue anywhere in the body basically just to melt and liquefy, which leads to something called rhabdomyolysis. And it can lead to something called compartment syndrome. So as all the tissues in the body are damaged and they start leaking water, they swell. I think Kevin McAllister needs some help.
Damn.
This is an explosion and a fire within a closed space of a toilet and a small bathroom. Inhalational injury is what happens when a patient suffers
that was
a burn in a closed
strength,
space.
though.
So most commonly within a car fire, the airway is subject to superheated air and other chemicals that are burning. What that leads to is severe swelling of the airway to the point that the airway can actually swell shut. That's going to be a giant heat sink with a lot of mechanical force from the explosion directly to the face and airways. I probably think that this is going to be a non-survivable injury, but maybe I'll be proven wrong.
They're magical, these two.
My main piece of advice
never
to these
moves.
guys would be to stop pulling on strings and ropes in this house, because only bad things happen when they do that.
That's a good piece of advice.
Well, this is one construction accident I've seen many times. My number one recommendation is you should always have a buddy when you're using a ladder, even if you think it's simple, even if you think it's safe. Just have somebody down at the bottom stabilizing things. I mean, Harry has Marv, Marv has Harry. That's the beauty of their relationship.
But they're
he looks
apart.
to be about 5-6 feet off the ground and hits. His head's definitely going to rock with that impact. Definitely a high risk for a concussion here.
Definitely got a concussion on that one. Oh my God, they're dead.
I'm really, really shocked and amazed by Marv and Harry. Home Alone Part 2, this house of horrors, is way more dangerous than the house back in Chicago. I think these injuries look a lot more serious. But despite all that, they've just really done a great job of getting themselves up, dusting
They're running on
themselves off,
spite and
continuing
magic.
on.
Spite and Christmas magic.
So quick little anatomy lesson about the nose. So most of the nose that you can feel is actually made of soft, squishy cartilage. So it's not likely to break or deform in any way. So typically if patients have broken a nose, it doesn't look squished in the front like what these two guys have. What it looks like is either flattened to one side, or if it's been broken in this way, it looks flattened, but only really between the eyes, and then really, really swollen, accompanied by a couple of black eyes too.
Yep, that's happened to me. Right here, it was a flat break, both my eyes. Oh.
In medicine and in surgery, we talk about something called the LD50, which means the lethal dose.
I should maybe have made this a drinking game. It's like I'll drink every time one of these things, or at least something really similar has happened to me. I would be trashed. And like you might have noticed I had a drink earlier. It was green tea. Like, if it had been alcohol.
Thing at which 50% of people, when exposed, will die.
I'm sorry, repeat that.
50 for in medicine and in surgery, we talk about something called the LD50, which means the lethal dose of something at which 50% of people, when exposed, will die.
Wow, okay.
LD50 for a fall from height is largely accepted as 4 stories. So anybody who falls 4 stories or more has more than 50% chance of death.
Pretty high.
I think this particular incident is especially dangerous for Harry, who falls from what I would consider a lethal height. Then his friend lands on top of him. Then a bunch of paint cans fall from even higher and land on top of him too. So those are 3 pretty dangerous mechanisms all at once.
Kevin is
I think the actual pecking itself is not likely to be that dangerous. However, if you spend a large amount of time in very close proximity to pigeons, they carry a number of zoonotic diseases. Zoonotic means a disease that you can catch from an animal that can be pretty dangerous to humans. There's a couple different types of pneumonia you can pick up from a pigeon, namely something called histoplasmosis. Well, all my friends living in New York, if you see a pigeon nesting on your windowsill, you should try to get rid of them because they have these little mites and they can apparently crawl through your window and infest your bed and then infest you.
Good to know. Good to know.
There you have it. That was each and every injury in Home Alone.
Thank you, Annie. All right. Wow. All right. I really like how seriously she was taking that. Like very like talking about each and every one of them as if like maybe they'll survive this one. It's like, oh, okay. You know, I appreciated her tone the whole time. Very teacherly. Yeah, I feel like I've gotten a lot of those injuries myself, or at least again, something similar. Nothing quite like it. But yeah, go ahead and anything like that happen to you? Not if it was super, super traumatic. If you can laugh about it now, like I can, like nothing that has happened to me has like permanently damaged me. So like I'm very lucky. Like I've accumulated quite a few injuries, including a concussion, like broken, like again, the cracked rib. I bet again, the worst broken bones I've ever had are like fingers. So it's like I broke this middle finger here. I've broken both of my pinkies. I've broken like a pinky toe, middle toe. Like I don't know, like again, cracked my shin, cracked a rib. I've fallen from really high. Bad bike accident. Like I've had like normal kid things also, I feel like. But again, kids have rubber bones. I did get I got a little electric zapped the other day though. That sucked. That hurt a lot and it wasn't comfortable for like an hour. My hand was super numb. It was scary. Anyway, tell me some of your least traumatic like Home Alone-iest injuries. I would be curious to know. And I hope you enjoyed this. I thought it was kind of fun. And again, if there are any like Christmassy type things or like Christmas related things that I should look at, go ahead and let me know because I would like to get a few more of them in before the season ends. Thank you so much. I will see you in the next one. Bye.